everybody? Welcome to another Professional Genealogist Reacts live stream. I'm going to be answering questions as always on today's live stream, getting started a little bit later than I usually do, but figured why not? It's been kind of a rainy day for me, dealing with all sorts of stuff, and give some people that prefer the later hour a little bit more time, because I do get a lot of people who jump in towards the end. So I know a lot of my European folks probably don't like this time as much, but either way, thank you everyone who's here. Getting started a lot quicker than usual too, jumping in quick. So we'll do our usual saying hello to everybody, and then we'll get into some questions. Didn't even pull up the Reddit today because the last few times we never even really got to it. So if we do have a slowdown point, we'll pull that up. But first, Anna Tommaso, can't wait. First time I can stick around for the whole thing. Wonderful. Well, glad you are able to. So I guess maybe one of the people that benefits from it being later. We also have Stig still on vacation in Tuscany. Well, wonderful to have you, even though you're still on vacation. Weeping Scorpion, hey there, just came in to say hello. I'll be in the process of driving to work when the stream starts, so maybe I'll catch the last half hour or so if I'm lucky. Y'all have a great time. Well, thank you for that. Hopefully we'll see you at some point if you're not already in here, but I guess probably not. We have Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy. Good day, eh? Well, hey, Brian, good day to you too. Hope you're doing well. Alexandra Cruz, hi, everybody. Greetings from Koblenz, Germany. Hello, Alexandra. Thank you for joining. Julia Joyce, greetings from Hampshire, England. Well, thank you, Julia, for joining us. And we have the wonderful admin mod, Charlin, what was I saying? Charlie L. Oliver, evening to you, Charlie. Thanks for joining. Hopefully not too late for you, although I think you're quite a night owl like I am. Carol Suniga, hi from California. Hi, Carol. I don't know what is with my pronunciation today. Although I never pronounce things well, do I? Sharon Phillips, good early evening from New York. Well, welcome, Sharon. Thank you for joining us. Karma Gal, hi from Nebraska. Hello, Karma. Thanks for joining. Torsten Healing, hi, Jarrett. Well, hello, Torsten. Thank you for joining. Destruction Cat, hello from Croatia. Hello, Destruction Cat. Thank you for joining us. Have a little bit of that Balkan representation in the chat today. And then on the other side of Europe, we have Nick coming from Groningen. Guten Abend without Groningen. Who is hot dar? I'm doing very well. Who hot head? Hope you are. Kevin, hello from Lancashire. Is it Lancashire or Lancashire? Northwest England. So I feel like part of what's so difficult with a lot of the pronunciations is we have cities and towns that have similar names that are pronounced differently. So not quite the same, but we have Lancaster, which I guess that's pronounced differently depending on who you are. So Lancaster, whatever. But yeah, either way, interesting, Lancashire. But thank you for joining. I recognize you from a lot of previous streams as well. And Alan, hello from Madison. Hello, Alan. Thank you for joining. And then, okay, so yeah, 2202. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Oh, wait, no, is that you're 7 hours ahead for some reason? Oh, wait, no. That's okay. Never mind. Not thinking right. Yeah, that's 5 hours ahead. Okay. Yeah, because I'm at 17:04 now, but yeah, normally a night owl. Yeah, me too. Lancashire. Okay, Lancashire, not Shire. Sheer. And enabled, disabled. Hello, good night in Sweden. Hello, thank you for joining. And then Matt Potter. Isn't every genealogist up until 2 a.m. in the morning, or is it just me? Hi from what was a hot and sunny UK, having our 2 days of summer. Yeah, I think a lot of genealogists end up staying up late. I think most genealogists have had that moment of starting to do some research a little bit late, maybe not too long before bed. And next thing you know, it's been like 3 or 4 hours later, and you're like, wait, what? Felt like it was only an hour. So yeah, I imagine a lot of genealogists have had that. Something about the nighttime for me, I feel like I work way better. Yeah, So that's why you probably won't be seeing many live streams of me before noon, at least East Coast time. Yeah. So, all right, Daniel M. Evening from Bristol. Need to get up early tomorrow morning, so only popping in to say hello from Bristol, UK. Well, thank you, Daniel, for jumping in to say hello. Don't know why I said Bristol twice there. That's okay. So, all right, we didn't have any questions in the beginning. I guess part of this is I just haven't done this quick of start the stream and then start talking. I feel like I usually let people spend a bit more time kind of getting in. It's always like the first 5-10 minutes is everyone kind of noticing the stream and all of that. But yeah, okay. Let's see. Alexandra, after 1 a.m., I can't read any document properly anymore. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah. For me, it's like it's so difficult to focus early in the day. I don't know what it is. A lot of us in the UK checking in tonight. Oh, is something going on in the UK? Hi, Jared. Got on late. Hey, didn't wait. Okay, yeah. Sorry. I'm getting on late. I'm not sure if you're saying you got on late, but we just started, so I thought I saw you earlier. Catch up tomorrow. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get some good questions. So everyone bring your questions in. Julia Joyce says, anybody had their MyHeritage ethnicity update? I'm still waiting for my results. My traits said I'm a night owl, and it's true. I believe that they are going to be rolling things out later than they expected. So I guess from their initial rollout of things, it seems like maybe they had some feedback that they were like, let's work on this. So I think that's my understanding, but I'm not 100% sure. So I know for all of the kits that I manage, only one of them got the update. All the others don't have it. And it's a huge mixture of DNA uploaded to MyHeritage, tests taken through MyHeritage, and all that. Funny enough, the one that actually got the update was a transfer, an autosomal DNA transfer. So, yeah. Carmigel, at Matt Potter, I've done that before. That was when I found 1900 census that a great grandfather and his first wife were on. What shocked me was seeing that my great grandpa had a son. Yeah, when you find one of those interesting things, and you just fall into the research rabbit hole. Daniel M. Question: if you want to discuss, anyone got their new MyHeritage results yet? I guess he must have sent that in right as Julie also sent hers in too. So, if anyone has anything about the MyHeritage results and wants to say anything, I know the last reaction one we went through a few on the Reddit. So, good evening from John Tyner, one of our wiki treers. Hello, John. Thanks for joining. And then a gazillion PTs here. Bistle. I don't know. Brizzle. I force myself to bed at 1. Yeah, I've tried that before, but I always end up being very, very awake and not falling asleep. What do you make of the new blog post from FTDNA? Apparently, their new MTD DNA tree is coming soon. Let's actually pull that up because I think I saw it and I never read it. So we can all kind of read it together. Okay. Share screen. Bippy boppity boop. Okay. No, thank you. Okay. So, all right. Interpreting mtDNA results. So, learn about the significance of mtDNA haplogroups and how your mtDNA results can help you trace your maternal ancestry back to mitochondrial Eve. This is part 3 of a 5-part series about what mtDNA is. So, wait, is there an update, or are these just blog posts just telling you how to make sense of it? Because I think these are just blog posts telling you how to make sense of it. Let's see. I mean, that's the latest one. This, when you said update, this is what I was thinking at first. You were talking about was the MyHeritage Family Tree DNA collaboration that they're doing, which they announced this at Roots Tech. But basically, that you can load your MyHeritage tree to your family tree DNA profile. So basically, when it comes to DNA matching, the big thing is figuring out how your DNA matches connect to you. And the easiest way to do that is to share your family tree. And family tree DNA's family tree feature is kind of clunky, not the easiest to use. There's no connection to it. So if you have your tree already built out extensively somewhere else, and then you want to put it into FTDNA, it's this whole to do. And so this is kind of changing that, which they're going to retire their current tree builder September 9th, 2024. And all trees not connected to the new experience will become read only. So yeah, I'm going to need to actually kind of go through and get that connected. But basically what it's going to do, I guess maybe they're going to have more going on. I don't know. I haven't gone too much into my understanding was basically that it's just you connect your tree, and then when people go and look at their matches, they can go and see. So not sure if that's the update that you were talking about, but didn't seem to be. Oh wow, we have a lot of. Oh, okay. It says that their updated tree is almost ready. So all that means is with the mitochondrial DNA and the Y DNA, as they're getting new testers, it constantly updates their trees, their phylogenetic trees, because as soon as you find someone with a unique genetic marker, they can be, in a sense, that missing link to then all of a sudden understanding the steps between certain haplogroups, and then it completely changes how they go through the haplogroups. That's one of the reasons why a lot of the haplogroups, especially for Y DNA, started being named for the SNP that's the specific terminal SNP, the SNP that's like the main one. So I think that I'm guessing that's what it means based on, it's not like a huge update to mitochondrial DNA or anything, but it's probably that, they had a lot of new mitochondrial DNA come through, and that's allowing them to get more haplogroups. So like here, let's see, they have, here's one. Y-DNA sheds new light on medieval genealogies. And basically they're able to then start distinguishing through extensive research. And so you can see over here, Y-DNA haplo tree, these numbers, those are the SNPs, the single nucleotide polymorphisms. So correspond to a specific SNP. Oh, wait. Ancestral names do not necessarily correspond to a specific SNP. So that's kind of a concept of the most recent common ancestor generalized sort of thing. But basically, the name isn't tied to the SNP, but these families come from that, and those are the families that are helping define the haplogroups that they're in. Yeah. So, all right, let's see. So many. It's like all of a sudden the comments exploded. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, a lot of stuff coming in. Okay. Yeah, MyHeritage still coming soon. The MyHeritage update wait is annoying because anytime I log in and check, they also spam with sales mails. Yeah. Okay. Sean, my results were pretty spot on, and I think one of the most interesting things to get out of when the new update rolls out for everyone is, are there certain population groups that find it correlates much better than others, which is probably going to be the case. That's why when we look at precision and recall numbers, it's by each population group, and some are better than others because it's just they have a better reliability in telling that. But I think it'll be interesting to see, are there certain population groups that have that, and for the population groups that don't get very good results, how bad are those results? Because I think that's one of the things that made MyHeritage such a hated company for admixtures, is because when people found that it was off from the trees that they knew, and especially trees that were confirmed through DNA matching, that it didn't align at all. It was like way out of whack, and then they'd be testing at the other companies, and those companies would be much more in line. So it'll be interesting to see, do certain ones seem to fit better or not. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm looking at your photo, so I'm assuming you're Northwestern European, maybe Central European. I could be completely wrong, just taking a guess, but more than likely Northwestern European and Central European, I'm thinking were probably a focus that they wanted to get a lot better, because that's a huge core of the people testing with them too. Yeah, I heard that some people got a second update after answering their survey. I hadn't heard that, but that's certainly possible. And Grandma got it a few days after. Mine still ain't updated. Yeah, it was really random how they did it. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some sort of literal random generation for it, just to get a wide sample group. All right, from HDVin78 coming from Twitch. Hi, Jarrett. Greetings from Missouri. First time here and so excited. What would cause me to share the same amount of centimorgans with a cousin and her father? What would cause that is just the fact that your cousin, when she inherited the DNA from her father, she just seemed to have inherited all of the segments that were also segments of DNA that is the DNA you share with her father. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. Sometimes there will be single segments, like big single segments that will be found in multiple generations, seemingly like very similar, like not smaller at all. And the colloquial name for it is sticky segments. A lot of genetic genealogists aren't the biggest fan of that, because it makes it seem like it's like something to do with that segment being, it's going to stick around. And it's just the randomness of recombination, where both lines inheritance just happened, where that segment didn't recombine each generation. It stayed the same as it was inherited each generation. And so that's not super common, but it's not that uncommon either. I know I've seen that a lot in my family. I know I've seen a lot of people where, it could go the other way as well, where you have someone where it's not even matching, or matching like a super small amount. And then all of a sudden you look at their parent and they're matching it like way more. Like just to give an example, maybe you matched a person at like 10 centimorgans, but their parent tested and you're matching their parent at like 150 centimorgans of DNA. That's a huge difference. But at the same time, you can have situations like what you're talking about, where you have this cousin that, maybe they're 150 centimorgan shared of DNA, and you look at their child and it's 150 centimorgans exactly. I think that's a little rarer. I feel like I usually see it at least kind of go down a bit. I have also seen it sometimes be a bit higher because of the various errors that can happen in reading things, as well as just the possibility of multiple relationships, even distantly, for folks, or endogamous populations and all that fun stuff. But yeah, so totally makes sense. I think it makes less sense the closer that cousin is to you. So if you're looking at a first cousin and their kid shares like almost exactly the same amount of DNA with you, I think that's much less likely than if you're dealing with a, second or third cousin or something. Just to show that, I guess, why not? We can look at the shared centimorgan project. And so when you look at self and your first cousin, on average, you share 396 centimorgans to whatever that was, 1,000. They just had it. 1,397 with an average of 866. And so, you can see a big variation where it is. But then when you look at what their children would be, which would be a first cousin once removed to you, there is a large overlap. Now, with the histogram, you get a much better idea of that because, with this histogram, you can see, the large majority is really kind of right in here between 300 and 700. Whereas with first cousin, it's really between 700 and 1100, the vast majority. So not quite as common, but then when you go out further, you can see the overlap gets much bigger. So with a second cousin, we can see 150 to 350 centimorgans is the large majority. And then for their kids, 50 centimorgans to 200 centimorgans is the large majority. So a much larger overlap. So if you are talking about a first cousin and a first cousin's, or even you say with a cousin and her father, if it's a first cousin and an aunt or an uncle situation, I think that would be really surprising because the overlap there, for one, the overlap in the ranges are barely even there. I mean, and then when you look at the histograms, 1,300 has very few people that are even falling in that category. Whereas even with first cousins, very few are falling in that category as well. So just that sort of thing. So if it's a further out cousin, second, third, fourth, or, it doesn't even have to be that exact. Could be a first cousin once removed, could be a third cousin once removed, whatever, same sort of deal. Hopefully that helps. Okay. I just finished work. Good timing. I have my heritage updates to answer that person's question. Okay, cool. So, it sounds like, we do have a mixture of people who have it, mixture of people who don't. And then here one, no my heritage update, still waiting for your dad's Y DNA, getting anxious too. Now he knows what I go through with these weights. Yeah. The weights are rough. The weights are rough. All right, let's jump through, see if we can find some questions. I see a lot of people talking about the My Heritage update. I need to get myself something to drink. All right. Alan, I'm asking everyone on this chair, what is your opinion of Ancestry's weighted centimorgan numbers? I've seen weird discrepancies. Okay, yeah, this is a pretty good question to talk about. What this is referencing is with Ancestry DNA, they have what's known as the Timber algorithm. And what the Timber algorithm does is that it basically is trying to filter out DNA that has a higher likelihood of being a false positive DNA. Or not even necessarily saying that, but DNA that there's a higher likelihood that it has no true meaning in terms of how you're related to people. Because there's also one of the things it's considering is what's known as pileup regions. So I've pulled up this article. I'm not going to read the article, but this is a kind of an interesting graph to talk about with it. One of the things they talk about with timber is that they're not cutting out segments necessarily as they are filtering it down. And so one of the things that they talk about are sizes of matching segments filtered by timber. So the difference between kind of filter and cut down is like taking out full segments versus bringing them down. But here you can see how often the size of the segment that they are filtering. So with 5 to 6 centimorgan segments, almost 95% of them are being filtered out. With 6 to 8 centimorgan segments, about 0.8% or 80% are being filtered out. And you can just kind of see it's getting lower and lower. And it really, once it kind of drops down over 20, or sorry, I guess really over 30, that's when you see it kind of really evens out in a sense. So it cuts this stuff down, and it basically is trying to give you a much truer amount of shared DNA. And where this is supposed to be most helpful is for like endogamous populations and people that may come from population groups or may have matches that there are multiple distant ways they're related or other anomalies going on, and Ancestry brings it down. And in my experience, I haven't felt like it's done a bad job. In my experience, honestly, I find that looking at the unweighted DNA hasn't proven super helpful. I think there have been a few cases where when I'm looking at shared matches of matches to try to determine a relationship to see if it is coming from a specific side or not, I'll find that there I'll see the weighted is like really low, and then I'll look at the unweighted and it's a lot more. And in those cases, it might be cutting more out than really is necessary. But I think in my experience overall, the Timber algorithm does a really good job of making the matches more in sync with what you would typically see for amount of shared DNA. So when I say that, something like this, something where like the Shared Centimorgan project, this is basing off of just, the large majority of people all over they're submitting into this. And that creates a specific kind of generalization you can give to the larger world population. But then within each of those populations, within the world population, there's variations of how people are related to each other. And that's where the whole idea of endogamy, where that is people only marrying and having children with people that are also from that same population group as them. And thus the descendants of that population group are all related to each other in many ways distantly. And that causes them to share more DNA on average. So when you look at, I guess a great-grandparent one probably is not good. Let's look at a cousin one. So when you look at a histogram like this, and you notice all of these people that are way above 150 centimorgans, even though the large majority are 125 and below, a lot of these may be representative of some of that endogamous population group. And when you look at the in-depth way that they came up with this stuff, see, is this the, I'll have to see. Basically he has, here we go, 50-page full PDF. This is the full PDF breaking down exactly how it's done. And when they go through this, they're cutting out outliers. There's a lot being done to give the data the best sort of information it can be. So we can see here, outlier removal. Each relationship was analyzed individually and blah, blah, blah. So even if submissions are coming through from endogamous populations, it'll throw things off. That's something that comes in and kind of cleans that up. It cleans up the anomalies and the outliers and things like that. So the reason I bring all of this up is basically that the Timber algorithm takes a lot of the profiles that are endogamous profiles where their weighted DNA fits more in line with what we see here than what the unweighted DNA shows. In my personal experience, this is just, my own anecdotal personal experience with it. So, I think it'd be an interesting sort of thing to study and see, do the numbers actually line up better, and, what kind of over filtering may they be doing with it, because I think that's the biggest issue people worry about with it is, are they accidentally filtering out really useful information? So one of the difficulties with understanding the weighted unweighted stuff too is that they don't give us a chromosome browser, and thus we can't see where they're weighting things down on what chromosomes, or they taking out a full segment? Are they cutting it in half? Are they just dwindling it down on the ends? What are they doing? And we can kind of only go off of what they say because we're not getting that in-depth data. Okay. We have a lot of comments that that have come up recently, so I'm going to kind of scroll forward. Thank you for that, Sean. Please like and subscribe. This is a good point for me to say because I am going to kind of be scrolling through past a bunch of people's questions and comments. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can through the chat, but I can't guarantee I will answer all the questions that come through chat. It's just not possible. But one thing I do guarantee is if you do the super sticker or super chat or whatever it is through YouTube, which is a thing that you pay for, which I do appreciate the support for that, but it makes it so that I can find the question really easily, and two, that I make those questions that I guarantee that I'll answer. So kind of a little, you help support the channel, and then you also kind of get a benefit, but you don't have to do that to have me answer a question. If I end up skipping your question, you can always repost it in the chat. But yeah, so just good point to say that. And so, yeah, so now we'll get to some of this stuff. So, all right, Eric Sheridan. My father and I have a DNA match who does not share any known matches with us. This person shares 143 centimorgans with my father, but she doesn't show up as a match for my aunt. What am I missing? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible for someone who's matching at 143 centimorgans to match somebody and then not match their sibling, because it could just be that your dad inherited that DNA and his sister didn't inherit any DNA that this cousin shares. It certainly seems, 143 centimorgans is a lot for that to be the case. It certainly is interesting. I mean, the number one thing to make sure, which I've seen you in a lot of these streams, so I imagine you already do know this basic stuff, but coming from like the IT tech sort of idea of just, assume that they're dumb, unfortunately, is, number one, make sure that you are going through the same database, because if his cousin's on one database and not on the other database where your aunt is, then obviously she won't show up as a match. I'm not saying that that's, that you haven't done that. I assume you have, because I have seen you I've seen you in a lot of these streams, but also for people that may not know this sort of stuff too. So that's the number one thing to double check. If you are on one where you have a chromosome browser, so basically MyHeritage, 23andMe, or Family Tree DNA, I think they all have the chromosome browser stuff back up. Look at the segments that you're sharing with these people, or that your dad shares with this person, and then see if there's anything that you can correlate for the segments. Now, I guess if you're not getting any shared matches, which that's kind of a really odd thing, DNA match who does not share any known matches with us. Something else to suggest too, depending on where they are, if you get in touch with this DNA match, ask them to upload to other sites or test elsewhere or something, because it could also be the database that you're in, and maybe the population group that you're coming from, that, maybe it's a population group that just isn't very well represented in that database. Like, if you're on Ancestry and let's say that your grandparents both came from Croatia, I don't know how well represented Croatia is in Ancestry, but from my experience, MyHeritage has a ton of matches. So if that's the case, it could very well be that you're not getting any shared matches because this one cousin just happens to be the only one cousin from that side of that family that tested on that site. And when you go and test at MyHeritage or something, it's going to get you a lot of others. And it could be a variation of databases that maybe you'll find something there. Now, I'm sure a lot of people at this point are asking, well, which one would be best for my population group? And, for the most part, it really just comes down to with MyHeritage, they're kind of the largest worldwide view. So for MyHeritage, they have a much better representation, in my experience, with Eastern European and Central European people. So not just coming from that ancestry, but still living there. So Eastern European, Central European, Balkans, Baltic states, all of that as well as just kind of generally throughout Europe. Whereas on Ancestry, 23andMe, and Family Tree DNA, I find that's more of an American, Canadian, UK centric thing, but I often like to call it kind of the English speaking world tests. So like you'll often find like Australians and New Zealanders and even South Africans on there as well. Although South Africans, I think, actually have much better representation on MyHeritage. But otherwise, other than that, I think it's a big variation, or it's hard to say which one's the best for which population group, other than Asian population groups, which may be best off testing with, I think it was WeGene that has DNA matching, which is an actual Asian-based DNA testing company. So they would have the most Asian-based testers. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to answer your question exactly. I think there's a few possibilities of what could be going on, like I mentioned, but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully one of the things I said will be helpful. So yeah. And then we'll jump straight to this. Torsten, how hard is it to do genealogical research on people from the 1700s? And that's a question that really just depends on the location. When it comes to records in the 1700s, it's the biggest factor is, number one, what type of records were being created in those areas. So in some areas, you have lots of records being done. In the Netherlands for the 1700s, it's extremely expansive what's available. And what we can find out, because we have all sorts of marriage records, wills, marriage bonds, birth records, death records, notarial records, tax records, and just, all sorts of stuff. But then you might look at other areas of Europe and the records are they just weren't taking that many records, or maybe there weren't that many government done records. It was more, local churches and things like that. And then it comes to the second biggest part of how well did that area keep their records? How well did they archive them and store them? And, how well accessible are they is another big thing. So like with areas that were the USSR and Russian Empire, excuse me, I'm going to take a pause here in a second and go get some water, but I'm going to finish answering this question first. But, in a lot of those areas, the records exist. They're just not easily available. And right now, there's huge digitization efforts in some of those regions. So like Ukraine right now is going through a massive project of digitizing everything. They signed a contract with Family Search, where Family Search is going through and doing really high quality digitization. There's a whole bunch of private projects going on. Alex Krakowski's project is a big one I've spoken about multiple times on my main channel. And for a lot of those, it's felt like most people can't get back to the 1700s, but they're pulling out and digitizing all of these 1700s and 1800 records. And now all of a sudden, what 10 years ago seemed to be an almost impossible task now is actually becoming a much more it's a much more possible thing to accomplish, and even more possible to accomplish without having to fly all the way out to where it is. So I think it really just comes down to that. I know that I've talked to a lot of people who come from population groups that don't have an easy time with records in the 1700s, and they come with this very like jaded outlook of, I don't trust trees that trace back this far, and sort of like I've heard that a few times from various genealogists and people that I'm like, really, like, there are records that we can be confident about and correlate. And, that's one of the beauties of Y-DNA to mitochondrial DNA, is that it goes and proves some of these extremely distant connections that you just can't confidently prove using autosomal DNA and stuff like that. So, okay, so I'm going to take a 5-minute breather. I never do this, but yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute breather. and I'm going to go grab some water, and then we're going to be back and we'll answer some more questions. So I need to just remember where I was beforehand. So I'll see you all back in a couple of minutes. I'm back. Hey, everybody. Not sure if anybody got that reference, but hey, I'm back. Got me some water. Can talk now without feeling all choked up. So, yeah, all right, let's see. Find where I was. And try to answer some of this. Was I? Where was that last question I answered? Okay, there it is. Oh, wait. Oh, that's. Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah. All right, let's catch up. I do see that we've got something start. Oh, Alan, thank you so much. $2 super sticker. All right, I'll have to keep an eye out. Let's look for your question if you have one. I know I answered something of yours before, but let's see. Okay, there. Aha, yeah. All right. I have one non-endogamous mid-range cousin and her son where the unweighted has the son with less than the mother. With the weighted, the son has more connection to me than the mother. Interesting. Yeah, and that could very well be a reason why it was brought down, is because, they knew that this was mother son, and they then, you know, assume maybe that a lot of this other DNA is not realistic. The other thing is that I'm not 100% sure of everything that goes into how they do filtering. You know, let's actually take a look, because one thing I'm wondering is, yeah, it doesn't look like. Basically, I'm wondering if maybe they do phasing, but I don't think so. Let's see. So there, white paper about it. All right, let's Timba. So yeah, so adjusting IBD for relationship estimation. IBD stands for identical by descent. So that means that the DNA you're sharing with this person is identical because you descend from the same ancestor, and thus you're inheriting that DNA from that ancestor. Okay, so then they're going into the nitty gritty of the timber algorithm. All right, so let's read through this. The timber algorithm. To compute timber scores for all IBD segments, we take the following steps. 1, select the timber reference set denoted by R. Our reference set contains 325,932 genotype samples. Okay, that is readable. 2, subdivide the genomes into windows. Here we use the same 96 SNP windows used to detect identical by descent. Let N be the number of windows. For each sample I and for each window, count the number of matches detected in J germline between sample I and sample I apostrophe. I don't know the terminology, how to say that, that overlap the window. We represent these counts as a vector. So this is all like well beyond my knowledge of whatever type of math or whatever this is. If anybody knows, I'll keep an eye out for it. But so yeah, so this is what they're doing for the timber algorithm. What it sounds like they're doing is they're basically comparing you against these 325,932 samples, and if the density of how much you're matching in certain spots against these samples is over a certain amount, then I guess it gets brought down. I'm not 100% certain that's the correct way to say it, but I believe that is what they're doing. It really is a shame that they can't give us the chromosome browser, and then even more, give us the chromosome browser and then give us the weighted and unweighted views. So let's read this. In summary, we've used our large genetic database to identify unusual matching patterns. And by quantifying these unusual patterns, we adjust the relationship evidence separately for each individual. Timber improves relationship estimates for more distant relatives, such as fifth or sixth cousins, by downweighting the evidence from regions that are less likely to be informative of close relationships. So, yeah. Yeah. I feel like timber is one of those things that, you know, it's very kind of hard to see in your mind exactly. I think you know, that's why it's always explained so simply of, you know, it's basically down weighting is one of the terminologies I know a lot of people use. Do they say that here? Down weight. Oh yeah, by down weighting, yeah, they say it right there. Where's the other place they say it? Oh, download PDF. Okay. But yeah, so that they're down weighting the segments, and so it brings it down. But when you get into the nitty gritty of exactly how they're figuring that out, they give you the information, you know. I mean, we've got this plus the other page that we were reading that's all about the timber algorithm. So, Yeah, it gives you a lot of information if you really want to dive in depth with it. But from what it sounds like that with that unweighted with the sun, thus being a lot higher than the weighted, that kind of might explain, or I guess that it could show one of two things. It could show one that it's working really well because it really cut out a lot of stuff that obviously shouldn't be matching if it's not matching through the mom who's how you're connected, or it's downweighting things a little too much, and maybe that other stuff that you were matching with, maybe it represents a connection through the father's side or something. But that's just kind of speaking hypothetically. So all right. Hopefully that was helpful. Thank you so much, Alan, for the $2 super sticker. Appreciate that. Okay, let's I have so many chat that I need to catch up on. While we do that, please join the Discord server. Thank you, Charlie, for putting that in there. We've got a very active Discord server, so if you have questions that you want answered, there's a lot of people in there that are very helpful. Every once in a while, I'll pop in and answer questions or chat with people and stuff. Not all the time though. So I know I have some people that'll join and kind of reach out personally through Discord and stuff, and I never check Discord messages or friend requests or anything like that really in there. So if you've done that, I apologize. I've probably not seen it. Croatia is decent in Ancestry. That is good to know. That is good to know. Okay. Enjufane. My first cousin's daughter took Ancestry test, but I can't see her in my matches. What's going on? Interesting. Now, a first cousin once removed is not one that has a high likelihood of no matches, because there are certain relationship distances, and you can pick them out fairly well because the range starts at 0, that there is a chance that they will be related to you at that distance, but you just share no DNA. A first cousin once removed, which is your first cousin's daughter, that is very questionable. If you can't see her in your matches, then there's one of two things going on. One, like I said earlier, just assuming from the IT standpoint of everyone's dumb, make sure that it's the same database. I'm sure it is. I'm sure both in Ancestry. But the other thing is that this is representative of some sort of an NPE in the family, not parent expected. So basically, either on her side, your first cousin once removed, or whatever, something's going on somewhere between that connection where they really aren't related to you that way. Now, I don't even think that it's a matter, based on what it sounds like, I don't even think it's a matter of like a half relationship thing, because if we look at a half first cousin once removed, we're still looking at a range where we should expect DNA. So what it sounds like is it sounds like either the parent that you think is the parent that connects you to this person is not that parent. The parent of your first cousin, who you think is your aunt or uncle, is not truly your biological aunt or uncle. And it could be for any number of reasons. It could be one of them was adopted, which probably, I think in that case, it seems more likely, because, I mean, if we were looking at a half first cousin once removed deal, I think that's what you'd be saying is, she matched really low. I don't understand that, but no match at all. It sounds like it's a pure NPE of something. Yeah. So it could be that either the parent that you think is your biological parent was adopted, the aunt or uncle was adopted, or the parent that you think you're related to truly that's not your parent, or the parent that you think is your first cousin's parent is not the parent. So they're just, based on that, it's indicating no biological connection. So the next thing you want to do is have more people in the family test. So, if you can get your first cousin to test, see if they're going to test and match you. If you have your aunt or uncle, or, whatever your first cousin's parent is, that is your biological connection or supposed biological connection, have them test, have your parents test. And somewhere in there, you're going to find, you'll probably find what's going on. But that's what sounds like. Okay, we have a whole ton of stuff, and I just saw a super chat come in. So I'm going to get to the super chat in a second, but we have so many in here. I'm going to try to answer some of this stuff. I am going to do this. Let's see. Okay, good. Sorry. Thanks. I just noticed I had some. What is going on? There we go. Sorry, I noticed I had some spam messages coming in my Twitch, and Charlie is on top of it. Thank you very much, Charlie. Okay. Let's see where I was. Let's keep. All right. Telepathic Wanderer. What are the chances of half-second cousins not sharing any detectable DNA? Well, we can look here. Half-second cousins, it looks like it's right on the edge. But it seems like it's going to be somewhat unlikely. So with half-second cousins, it's, the chance is probably going to be very, very low. I mean, my guess is like in the point something percentage. I don't, based on the way this is looking, I would think that you're probably going to share DNA with half-second cousin. Half-second cousin ones aren't moved. Now that's a different story. It seems like that there's a lot that have zero, although it's a shame they don't show you how many kind of fall into the zero category necessarily. But do they have the... No, okay. That's just... For some reason, I feel like there was a more advanced version of looking at the histograms, but I think that might be in this. So let's look at that. So this. So yeah, half-second cousins. So that's the breakdown. That's not giving us any extra info. Okay, let's see. That's just relationship charts. So that's just the change in time of the okay. Not there. But I was trying to see if I could find something that would show how many people were second cousin and showed zero, but I guess I don't know. So yeah, so seems unlikely, but I guess there may be a very, very, very minute possibility. Okay. All right, Nick Brokema. When you use a web page as a source, do you use something like the Wayback Machine to preserve the information, or just the original URL? Interesting. When I use a web page as a source, I think I'm often taking a snapshot of it. I guess it also depends on the web page. I know over the years I've done the whole, just the link, and then the link expires, and then I have done the Wayback Machine snapshots with stuff. But yeah, it's not something I think I really. Yeah, I think I snapshot it most of the time, because especially when if I'm gonna do a report or something where I'm going to talk about like a specific web page or thing like that, I'll snapshot it. A lot of times now I'm doing the videos when I'm talking about web pages I'm using for research, so I have to snapshot it to show it on video anyway. So I think that's kind of usually what I'm doing, but yeah. All right. Praveen Prabhaharan. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but I feel like I might have gotten it close. I don't know. Hey, Jared, my family is Tamil, so we use a patronymic naming system, no surnames. Do you have any suggestions on how to research or organize a family tree due to this? Yeah, this is something that's really difficult to deal with. Most patronymic systems give you just, child and father. There are some that will give you multi-generation, so child, father, grandfather, which in those cases, that's where you can sometimes start creating a more unique way of trying to identify connections, but you're still, it's a huge uphill battle, because the difficulty with this type of genealogy is that you're constantly running into the issue of people possibly not being the same person, multiple people with the same names. And especially in certain patronymic systems, I don't know how it is for Tamil families, but I know this is how Scandinavian families are, is there's a billion Hans, there's a billion Olas, there's a billion Peters, and there's a billion what are some other ones? I don't know, Hans, Olsen, Peter. So you'll have generations of Hans Olsen, Ola Peterson, Peter Hansen, Hans Olsen. It's just like over and over and over and over. So it's a matter of getting as much specific information about each person that can allow you to specifically identify them. Now, if you have records that have signatures, I don't know if Tamil record, what those records are like. I don't know what the culture was like in terms of signatures and things like that. But that is a very good way sometimes to be able to correlate records where, you've got 20 different Hans Petersons living in the same area at the same time, born within a couple of years of each other. And so when you can pick out certain things that distinguish one from all of the rest, using that to really, really hone in on can be the way to go. So hopefully that's helpful. But yeah, very difficult with patronymic stuff. It's really just, all about getting that one little thing. So, signatures are a fun one because signatures can look really cool too. And it's kind of a connection of, you can see the flow of their handwriting and all of that. But then it's a great way, especially for records where, all you have are names, but it's a really interesting story tied to these names. But, with no other correlating information, addresses, ages obviously are a thing, but then, relationships otherwise. So, one of the big things I think with patronymic families is finding people with very unique given names. And then once you find one of those, you can kind of build around them in sort of a weird friends, associates, neighbors types of research, what's known as fan research. So yeah, a lot there are ways to overcome it, but it is a uphill battle. Okay. I have a couple of super chats now, so we're going to go through those. Distraction Cat, 5 pounds. Thank you so much for that. All right, wait, no, that's euros, not pounds, right? Okay. Would Serbian DNA then be under Eastern European and then subset Serbian, or Balkan and then subset Serbian? Do they have any communities defined? I'm not 100% sure. Let's pull up the map so people can see. Because when it comes to defining like Balkans versus Eastern Europe and, a lot of that stuff, let me make sure I'm not sharing anything. We'll do Google Earth. Okay. There we go. All right. Oh yeah, I've got to turn that on. Oh, there we go. Okay. It's like I thought I had it on. All right. So, so we have Serbia right here, and we can see it's kind of smack dab in the Balkans in a sense. But then when he deals with the Balkans, it really is a lot of bleeding into various population groups in a sense. So, I mean, there's a lot of strong correlations, obviously, to Eastern Europe, that a lot of that Slavic connection. There is connection into Eastern Asia. There's that Mediterranean connection close by, that Central European connection, all of that fun stuff. But the main question here is, where is it falling? Is it Eastern European? Is it Balkan? And yeah, now it's going to probably depend on each site. So we'll just have to look up each site and how they're defining it, because I think it's going to depend on when they do these studies, trying to figure out what's the best way they can define it that actually fits exactly what we're looking at. So with Eastern European here on 23andMe, why don't you like that? It's not falling into it. We can see that the Eastern European, this is kind of what they're aiming for. Then with Southern European, that's where it's falling into. So the Balkans here are Southern European. And then when we look at Greek and Balkan for Southern European, Serbia is in the list. So for 23andMe, that's how they're doing it. Now, as for communities defined, I don't think they give the list here, but okay, Ancestry populations. So we'll go to Europe, and then you don't have Balkans by itself. So let's do this. Serbia. Okay, so we have Western Hungary and Northwest Serbia falling under Germanic Europe. And then we have Carpinius to Comluso, Mare, Romania to Kikinda, Serbia. So all of this as Germans in Romania, which is part of the community groups, I believe. So that's the three where they have Serbia that they're saying that's where they're falling into. Now, I don't know if they have... Yeah, so for like the Balkans... okay, yeah, let's see. Okay, so this is our actual groups. I'm trying to see is... They don't break this down very easily here. Because they give us the like overarching things and they give us all the communities. So these communities are falling under this stuff. Eastern Europe, Europe, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so they're putting it under Germanic Europe. Germans in Romania. So that's what you're getting for Ancestry. And then let's say my heritage. Well, I guess my heritage, we won't worry about. Family tree DNA, population groups. Okay, hopefully this is the right one. All right, so with this, we've got the map 24, Greece and Balkans, obviously. And then let's see if they have anything Serbia-wise. No, so it's probably just Greek Balkans, just following somewhere in the Greece Balkans sort of thing. Could be falling in Eastern Europe, obviously Western Slavic. Going back to the, that's the Western Slavic. So, Yeah. And then, so I think those three are good ones to, use as kind of examples. So yeah, we'll see where that's falling. But you can see with each company, it's kind of falling a little differently. And as time goes on, it's going to be a race for each company to try to be the one to give the most nuanced and reliable admixtures. And, while I think a lot of us kind of already realize that, at the same time, it's going to be in specific population groups where they're going to really, I think, shine. So a great example, Living DNA is one of the companies that worked really, really hard to come up with this whole thing, which they used to have an easily viewable map of this, and I don't know why I can't find it anymore. But you can see the breakdown of Africa here is so much more nuanced than anything you really get on any of the other sites. So it really is quite different. And that's what a lot of these sites are going to have to do, I think, is they're all going to start competing for specific population groups as like one of their main ones, which I think a lot of them kind of try to go for Africa because that's one of the spots that is so glaringly under tested. But that's, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, obviously. All right. Before we get to Brian's, thank you very much, Destruction Cat, for the €5. Hopefully my answer was helpful for you. Then we got Brian, how we got here, Genealogy. Thanks for your always helpful advice and understanding DNA better. Well, thank you, Brian, so much for the support. I truly appreciate it. For those who aren't familiar, Brian is a genealogist as well. He specializes in areas in Canada and Scottish ancestry, and especially with Scottish Canadian ancestry. He has his own YouTube channel, How We Got Here Genealogy, which is obviously what it's called. So definitely go check his stuff out too. Great, very informative stuff. And he's helped me in some of the research and some of the videos I've done, including with some of Matt Baker from Useful Charts family history in Canada. So thank you again for the support, Brian. I appreciate that. All right, so let's jump back to questions in chat. I think I'm just going to scroll straight up to some of the most recent, because I see we've been having lots of questions. Great point, Sean. DNA doesn't have borders. Yeah, I like to say DNA doesn't care about borders. Yeah. And yeah, Vera, 1981, DNA has no borders or modern ideas of nationality. Okay, let's see. Okay, follow-up, Destruction Count. My husband is supposed to have 25%, but we have no idea where it was sorted in Ancestry. For Croatia, I had plenty breakdowns in Ancestry DNA. Yeah, and it could also be too, I guess, with 25% Serbian, I think is what you're saying, based on your question. I don't know if I missed any other ones in between your question and that, but, based on your question, 25% Serbian, maybe it's getting sorted into something else. And that's one of the reasons why with these admixture videos, I'm always talking about, well, it could be this, and well, it could be that, and it could be this. And it's always funny to me that people be like, well, you didn't consider this, and you didn't consider that. And the truth is if I sat there considering every single thing that it could be, we'd be there for hours. And that's one of the reasons why admixtures aren't the best to go off of when, trying to understand your ancestry fully. Obviously, it's a great way to kind of begin and get a blurry idea of it, but it's not going to give you very, very definitive answers most of the time. For some people, it can be very, very useful genealogically and can, tell you something that you didn't know. Great example, Steve Heimler of Heimler's History, the video I did on his family, when he did a DNA test, came back with, I think it was like 13% or 14%, something like that, Jewish DNA. He never had heard about that before in his life. And then that whole video I did was talking about identifying that ancestor, and then building out that genealogy. And it all starts with the admixture, but the admixture is just a small little idea of what was going on. But when I do a lot of these breakdowns, it's always talking about, well, what in the readings could be representative of this ancestry that he knows of, and then also how much of his Serbian ancestry does he know. Going back to the map, where is it? There we go. Going back to the map, depending on where in Serbia he's from, I imagine that could change things greatly. Now, I don't know a lot of the politics in terms of the Balkans and which countries have certain population groups that are very distinct from the others, because I do know that is a thing in the Balkans. That there are certain population groups that seem to be very genetically different than the others, but I don't have enough experience with people directly from the Balkans to be able to say anything directly about it. But what I can just say in a general sense is just the idea of that, you deal with people who are from northern Serbia. Those genetics that they're dealing with are probably going to have a much bigger correlation to these areas of Hungary and Slovakia and Austria and all of that versus areas in southern Serbia or western or eastern, whatever. And so then also knowing the history of those areas, because maybe he's coming from an area that, his family was there for a couple hundred years, but you go a couple hundred years back and then all of a sudden the majority of his ancestors were actually a migration wave that came from Moldova or something, or just those little pockets of things. So like a great example that isn't Serbian or anything, but something kind of similar is the whole Volga Germans. You have a huge amount of Germans who are coming from the Alsace-Lorraine region and kind of, all over sort of these areas. Like a lot of them are even probably you could consider sort of French too. But basically, all over these sorts of areas right here. And then they're being transplanted and coming all the way over here to the Volga River. Thank you, Catherine. So we have the Volga River right here. Do I have waterways turned on? Or is it just going to take a second to load in? Places. Water. Oh, there we go. Okay. Volga River. There we go. So, you have this group coming all the way from over here to over here. And then let's say, one of these communities, they kind of lose a lot of that knowledge of the Volga Germans. And, the Volga Germans, this is mid-1800s. So by this point, there's probably a lot of people who live in Russia in these areas that, as far as they know, for a couple hundred years, they just have family living, in Saratov off of the Volga River. And, maybe they knew about the Germans that came there or whatever, but then they take a DNA test and all of a sudden it's, why am I not getting any of this Russian? Why is it all of this German, all of that? And so that's the kind of historical thing where knowing that can be very helpful in understanding that stuff. The thing is when you know that stuff, it may not always be the answer. What you think might be the answer may not always be. And so that's one of the reasons why you'll constantly hear me say, well, one possibility, something to consider, because that's all you can do with the admixture. It's the genealogy and the actual discovery through DNA matching that allows you to confirm that hypothesis, those hypotheses. So hopefully that was helpful, but yeah, I guess a little extension off the question you had before. All right, let's scroll through, see. Question, if I delete my DNA test, will they actually destroy the lab tests? So I guess what you're saying is, will they destroy the sample? Or the records of your of your test. And to answer that, I'm not 100% sure. For the sample part, I know that a lot of the companies have an option to destroy sample. Like I know 23andMe has that. And Smarter Every Day, the YouTube channel, went and toured their facilities, and I did a reaction to that video, and that was one of the things they discussed. Was they were like, when people say that they want their sample destroyed, what do we do with it? Well, here's what we do. So Some companies do that, but in terms of, if you delete your DNA test and get rid of it, how much do they get rid of and destroy? I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. Or do they keep it forever? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, Alexandra. My father is a match that is endogamous. Her maternal grandparents were second cousins. Okay, so that's actually not endogamy. That's pedigree collapse. I know that's actually something a lot of people will get confused, but let's continue. She shares 162 centimorgans, filtering segments less than 10, with a largest segment of 55 centimorgans. Could she really be a second cousin? I mean, it's certainly possible. One of the big things to check for is, does it seem that this relation of yours to this cousin, is it coming through her maternal side? Because if it is coming through a maternal side, then you have to worry about the pedigree collapse. If it's not coming through her maternal side and coming through a paternal side, then you're not dealing with the pedigree collapse. So this is a place where a website like Banyan DNA actually is helpful. So let's kind of dive into a bit. So first off, I say, maternal grandparents were second cousins. That's not endogamy. That's pedigree collapse. What is the difference? Well, pedigree collapse is just when you have cousins marrying cousins. So in this case, they're second cousins. They're marrying each other. You have pedigree collapse, meaning that now the number of ancestors you would typically expect for someone has collapsed. It's smaller than it would be because those ancestors are ancestors of this person twice. So the maternal grandparents, all of their kids and descendants will be descended from their shared ancestors through both of them. Now, what's the difference with endogamy? Well, endogamy is where this is happening over and over and over for generations upon generations. But as well, it's not just pedigree collapse. Endogamy is also what's known as double relations. So it's a mixture of both. The purest form of double relations is what's known as double cousins, double first cousins. And double first cousins is when, let's say you have a pair of sisters and they meet two guys who are also brothers. One of the girls marries one of the guys, the other girl marries the other guy. So when they have kids, the kids will be related to each other in two ways. The kids will be related to their cousins through both their father, because their fathers were brothers, and through their mother, because their mothers were sisters. So double first cousins. So endogamy is this happening over and over and over to the point that everybody within this population group is going to have lots and lots of small little segments that they share because they're distantly related in many ways. But when you're dealing with close pedigree collapse, it's a much more straightforward thing to deal with. With endogamy, it's kind of a little bit, I'm trying to think of a good term to put it, but with endogamy, it's something that's a bit more to deal with because, you don't know how many times they could be related to each other. You could be related to this person 20 different times within the past 400 years. You could be related to this person 10 times in the past 400 years. But with pedigree collapse, you know exactly here's where that connection comes in. And so Banyan DNA, which is that a new website that came out earlier this year, it's by Leah Larkin, who started What Are the Odds, or was one of the big developers in it. I don't know exactly everything she did with it, but I know she was a major part of it, if not the large majority of it. And this is kind of taking What Are the Odds and expanding that. So what it allows you to do is build and visualize complex family trees. And what she means by complex family trees is double cousins and pedigree collapse. I was kind of hoping she might have something on here to show a good example of it. Yeah, so here we can see spousal relationships, half relationships, pedigree collapse, offspring from two individuals who have a shared ancestor. But then they have more than that. I know one of the examples that she used at Roots Tech, which I think a lot of people would enjoy, is that they use the Targaryen family tree as an example to show how to use it, because the Targaryen family is obviously you know, very very pedigree collapsed family. But yeah, so this is something where the idea is that you can put that in, show the multiple relation or the pedigree collapse. So like here, it looks like we have that going on, or maybe not, just looked like it. But yeah, so it may help with that. But yeah, that's the number one thing with your main question, though, is that, you know, you say, could she really be a second cousin? But if it's only through her maternal side, that's the first thing you need to determine. Is your connection to her through her maternal side or through her paternal side? Because if it is through the maternal side, then you do need to take it into consideration. If it's not, then you don't have to take it into consideration. So, okay, let's see. I have a lot of questions. All right, scroll to the bottom. All right, let's see. Bervar. Ancestry centimorgan below 90 centimorgans is just random. Getting so frustrated with how many known relatives have their centimorgans randomly changed. One second cousin once removed had their amount reduced from 73 centimorgans to just 9 centimorgans. Any advice, please? Let's see. I want to look something up really quick to help answer this. Basically, to answer your question, I need to determine something that I've never determined conclusively, and that is, does Ancestry do automatic phasing? And what that means is once a parent has taken a DNA test, do they phase the DNA so they know exactly what DNA you're getting? So, let's see. Okay, they're just explaining just regular matching, nothing to do with phasing. Okay. Okay, so they just do auto phasing, not a. So basically, what I'm trying to figure out is if they do automatic phasing once a parent-child relationship has been determined, then using that they can then determine how someone is better related to somebody. So if you have a second cousin once removed that goes from 73 centimorgans to 9 centimorgans, and they are doing this phasing, that could be an explanation why. But looking through just very quickly, I'm not 100% sure if they do that automatic phasing. But then at the same time, question for you, you say a second cousin once removed had their amount reduced, but is this a second cousin once removed that's a proven second cousin once removed to you? Or is it just a match where the estimated relationship range was a second cousin once removed? Because if it's just the estimated relationship range, then that makes a bit more sense too. I mean, 9 centimorgans for a second cousin once removed is really low. I know I have it pulled up somewhere. Yeah. So second cousin once removed, we can see that histogram is well within the 50 to 200 centimorgan range. I hate that it keeps doing that to me. Okay. Yes, they do phasing described in their white paper, but I have proof it's completely junk. Both my parents are on Ancestry, and they allocate side view randomly between parents 1 and 2. So what it sounds like you're saying they do phasing described in their white paper, but there's different kinds of phasing. There's phasing that is assumed phasing. I don't know if there's a specific term for it, but basically it's what these sites are already doing. They're basically taking your DNA and trying to figure out how is it phased? And so I think, what we just looked at a second ago that I had pulled up that was talking about phasing, that wasn't talking about that you have your parents test and then they change what happens, which I know, like, I think 23andMe does that. You like go into 23andMe, your parent tests, you go in, you connect it together, and then it will phase it for you and it'll make sure that everything lines up. But with auto phasing, they aren't 100% sure. And so what they're doing in that white paper is probably explaining how they are phasing the DNA. So what was it that we were just looking at? So I'll pull that back up. So for those, this was Berivar's answer. Yes. Okay. Sorry, that yes, they do phasing. Okay, but then the other one, yes, it's a proven second cousin once removed. I also have 12 known third cousins. All of them have reasonable adjusted centimorgan. The adjusted centimorgan is random adjustments, some a lot, some a little. Now you keep saying adjusted. Are you saying the weighted versus unweighted, or are you saying that it changed? Because from what you said at first, it sounded like you were saying in Ancestry DNA, they reduced from 73 centimorgans to just 9 centimorgans. I was actually thinking you were saying that you had a match that was 73 centimorgans, and all of a sudden one day you logged in, and all of a sudden they were 9 centimorgans. The other thing too is maybe could be an update to the Timber algorithm. I think they do update Timber. See if they have an announcement of of Timber. So, but yeah, I mean, if it's just the weighted versus unweighted, then what I think it just could be a case of that a lot of what they're taking out shouldn't be taken out, or what they're down weighting didn't need down weighting. But like here, so what they're talking about is, how they figure out how they're phasing. So the first step of DNA matching called phasing, which distinguishes the two copies of a person's genome, and then learn how we do it with side view technology. So I think this is kind of confirming what I was asking is, when your parents test, do they use the parents test to get pure phasing, or do they just rely on this stuff? So, here they're talking about, okay, so here we have your DNA. Now we got to figure out what's coming from which parent. So they determine that. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I meant comparing what they show as the shared amount versus the unweighted centimorgan. I should mention I'm Ashkenazi with 200,000 matches for each of my parents. Yeah, same too. Same. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for weighted versus unweighted, I think you're just dealing with a case of they went overboard on the down weighting of it. So yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway of it. How long have I been going? Oh, an hour and a half. Okay. So, all right, let's go back up because I was jumping around looking for those. Okay. All right. Okay, Mom Pafelski. So girl cousins who marry brothers. That is pedigree collapse. But like my dad's family was from the same country for 200 years. He thought he was related to everyone there. That would be the... well, I mean, that if he was related to everyone there, I mean, that would be more in terms of the endogamy thing. So, pedigree collapse is just when two people who have a shared ancestry have children together. So, in the technical sense, every time you have children with anybody, it's pedigree collapse because everybody's really related to everybody. But granted, it's not going to be a super effectual thing when, most people, their shared ancestors are, from my experience, most people within the same population group are usually, I want to say, you'll usually find a relationship within about I want to say 20 generations at least. With generations being, about 30 years or so, then, you're looking at about 600 years back. But, in my experience, especially with like the World Family Tree, Genie.com, and finding all the relationships for a lot of people, it's like, from what I find, anyone who's European, who's connected in the royal family trees, you can usually find that they're related to everybody else within those same connections. Furthest being about within like a 25 cousin distance or so, stuff like that. So, everyone is really related, but that's just kind of in the more grandiose sense of things. When we're talking about family tree, obviously pedigree collapse is referring more to when it's within I think, genetically relevant distance. So, within the past 200, 300 years, really. Because that's when we're looking at our autosomal DNA, that's where you have the strong confidence of where it's coming from. So, yeah. I didn't see a follow-up to that. I don't know if that ended, because you said that would be and then it ended. So I'm guessing that was an accident, but all right. Let's continue. All right. Continuing the pedigree collapse theme. My maternal grandmother parents are first cousins. So this is called pedigree collapse. I expected to see a higher amount of DNA match with descendants in the non-line, the duplicated, but I haven't. Yeah, I mean, it'll depend really on how distant these matches are. So if your grandparents, if your maternal grandmother's parents are first cousins, then anyone that's a close relation through that side, you'll probably see more shared DNA, and not descendants of your maternal grandmother, but more of the descendants of your maternal grandmother's cousins. So, if your maternal grandmother's parents, your second or your first great grandparents were first cousins, then all of their siblings and their descendants you'll be related to in two ways. And all of their cousins, all of that. But as you get further out, it's not going to affect you as much. And that's one of the reasons why we treat pedigree collapse and double cousins and endogamy so differently, is because they show up in the DNA quite differently. And for pedigree collapse and stuff like that, it only takes a couple of generations for it to really filter out to the point that you're not really getting that much of not that much more shared DNA with people than you would expect. So especially, if you're talking about your great grandparents were first cousins to each other, that is somewhat recently, but then, all of the relatives that you're going to have through that side that it's going to make a difference on, which is, like I said, those great grandparents, siblings or further, and then their descendants. So that's going to mean, your great grandparents, siblings, descendants are at your same level, they're your third cousins. So here, let's pull this up. So we have you, your parents, your grandparents, and then your great grandparents. And so we're talking about your great grandparents, siblings, or they're more distant. So basically all these gray, yellow, purple, that's where we're looking at in terms of the people that are going to share more DNA than you would expect. But we're already at a pretty far distance out. And for the people that are alive right now, that would most likely be DNA testing and matching you, they're going to be probably within these same generations or so. And when you look at these, they're all actually, they overlap a lot. There's a lot of overlap in the range of amount of shared DNA. So what you'd probably see is not exactly sharing way more than you'd expect, but more than likely you'd just be sharing more towards the higher end of the range, maybe a little bit outside of the range, which is honestly not too dissimilar from what we see sometimes with light endogamy. populations where there has been some endogamy, but not like to a crazy extent that it's extremely difficult to figure out. All right, yeah. In rural Portugal, 18th, 19th century, we see a lot of double cousins and pedigree collapse. I made a tree that was more like a family web than a tree. Yeah, and they really get like that when you do that. A cousin of my maternal grandma married one of my maternal grandpa's brothers. How would you categorize this? So this is a double cousin relationship. So when I was talking before, the purest form of double cousins is double first cousins, where, a pair of brothers marry a pair of sisters, and now the children are first cousins through both their mom and their dad. But double cousins just literally means that of you're related in two ways. So another way I always like to say it to people is, imagine that you have a wedding and you have your cousins from your mom's side and your dad's side show up, and one of your first cousins from your mom's side falls in love with your first cousin from your dad's side. They marry and have kids. Well, those kids are going to be related to your kids in both of those ways, because even though they weren't related to each other, both of them are related to you. And so their kids will be double cousins to you in different ways. So, when you have a situation like this, so cousin of a maternal grandma married a cousin or a brother of a maternal grandpa. Thus, all of your maternal grandparents' descendants are doubly related to those people. So since one's a cousin and one's a brother, then it's going to offset what those two relationships are to you. So it's like, let's see, a cousin of a maternal grandma. So let's just call it a first cousin of your maternal grandparents, or your grandparents' first cousin, which is a first cousin twice removed. So their kids or their grandkids, the generation that's going to be with you, that's your third cousins. But then the other is your grandpa's brother, so your uncle. So the same generation would be second cousins. So those cousins of yours that are the same generation of you that descend from that marriage will be your second cousins and your third cousins. So your second cousins through your maternal grandfather and your third cousins through your maternal grandmother. So double relation. And then to kind of get an idea of, well, what kind of a DNA match would we be looking at in that case? Well, add those together, and that's kind of what you'll usually see. So, average 229 plus average 73. Yeah, I guess probably about 300 centimorgans or so, which honestly doesn't seem that far out of whack for a regular second cousin anyway. So yeah, okay. Okay, let's scroll down. See a lot of the same people posting questions. So I've been trying to kind of hit different people that are asking stuff. I'm confused about terminology. Is the father of your great grandfather your first great grandfather or your second great grandfather? He'd be your second great grandfather. So, when they say first great grandfather, it's just, how many greats are there? So first great grandfather, your first great, one great, that's just great grandfather. Then your second great grandfather, or your great great grandfather, two greats, your great 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 grandfather, your third great grandfather, that sort of stuff. The place where I think it gets more confusing is when you get into aunts and uncles, because there's two lines of thinking. There are great aunts and great uncles, and then second great aunts and second great uncles, and third great aunts and third great uncles, which is kind of my preferred way of doing things. But the admittedly more sensible and logical way of doing things is to follow the grand method. So your great aunt or uncle is not your great aunt or uncle, they're your grand aunt or uncle. And then what I call a second great aunt or uncle is actually your first great grand aunt or uncle. And the idea with that is that the number of greats correlates to the aunt or uncle. So you have your aunt or uncle, and then you'd have a grand aunt or grand uncle, like you have a grandparent, so same generation, then a second, or then a great grand aunt or uncle, which is correlated to the great grandparent. And yeah, so I know that's a big thing with a lot of people. I grew up doing great aunt, great uncle, second great aunt, second great uncle, all of that. I knew a lot of my great aunts and uncles, so I called them great aunt and uncle. I guess I didn't know a lot of them, but I knew some of my great aunts and great uncles, and so that's what, great aunts and all that. But sensibly, it does match up more with grand aunt, grand uncle, great grand, because then you know exactly. Because even now, even though I prefer saying, my great aunt, great uncle, or stuff like that, I always have to kind of do the math in my head of like, oh wait, what is the one and the other and the, so yeah. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of stuff coming through. Yeah, I get confused with the great grand aunt versus great aunt sometimes. I think part of the confusion with the great grand is because there were so many. Yeah, I guess if you grew up in a family where it's different on different sides, because like I know for my family, one of the weird differences was how we pronounced aunt or uncle, or not aunt or uncle, but aunt versus aunt. And on my mom's side, we say aunt. On my dad's side, they say aunt. And when I was growing up, I say aunt. And my dad makes fun of me all the time. Like, I don't even think he thinks about it that much. I think it's just like a tick he has now. Like, it's just like he kind of does it. But, I'll be like, oh, yeah, aunt this or aunt that. And he goes, oh, aunt the aunt. And he just, super posh sort of thing. And it's like, no, it's aunt. It's your aunt, not your aunt. Your aunt. Yes, it's aunt. I don't want to name any of my aunts right now. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, Carmine, follow the grand method as well. Pet peeve when I hear a grand aunt uncle being referred to as great aunt or uncle. Yeah. You must cringe sometimes with some of my videos then, because I know even with my videos I go by the great system. So all right. Bear Var, what are your thoughts on the new FTDNA integration with MyHeritage family trees? I think it's really interesting. I think it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing how well it works out, because right now the family tree DNA family tree system is not very good. It's very clunky, and even in my own personal experience, it's really annoying to go in and edit and connect your matches, and whenever there's something that you need to change up, it's really difficult to do. And I know there's a lot of people that don't go into their family tree DNA profiles to update a lot of stuff. So that'll be a really useful part to it, is that I think that, we're going to have constantly evolving trees for your matches like you do with Ancestry. And if you test in MyHeritage, when you look at what trees connected to it, as they update their trees, that updates in the system as well. Whereas with family tree DNA, it's a lot harder to update that stuff. It's not part of the system. And so I think that's going to be a big benefit. I think, as long as it's not a very difficult thing to do, it should be very useful. But I think if it's going to be one of those things that ends up being really difficult to do, it's going to make it so that it's only a very minute amount of people that end up actually doing it. And then you're just going to end up with far fewer people with trees in there, because I know that they said that they're going to, I think, disable, or do I still have that pulled up? Because I had it actually pulled up before. Is this the blog still? Yeah, so we can just look at it here. So let's find where it is. Yeah, connect your family tree with MyHeritage. So when you go into FTDNA, you connect it in. You choose which family tree DNA to have it go over, transfers over, and bing, bang, boom. Now it's connected. So yeah, here we go. So this is what I was looking for. You can still edit and expand your family tree on FTDNA until you connect your tree with MyHeritage, or September 9th, 2024, whichever comes first. Continuing editing your tree after September 9th, connect with MyHeritage. So I guess they didn't answer it. What I was trying to find was what they do with the family tree DNA trees after it's gone. So basically, like, there's a ton of FTDNA users who don't go on FTDNA anymore. There's a ton of FTDNA users who probably have passed away. Honestly, there's probably a bunch of them because FTDNA has been around longer than pretty much any of the companies for consumer DNA testing. So there's probably a lot of those. So I think that's going to be a big question. Okay, you can still view the family trees of your matches and project members when you click to view a few. Okay. No. Yeah, because if they do it where they get rid of all the other trees that are connected, I think that's a huge downgrade, because then, like I said, all these profiles of people that either aren't logging in or just aren't alive anymore, all of a sudden all of their trees are gone, and now you're working with even less. So I think that's a big question I have, which, I haven't read through this blog. I mean, basically what you're seeing me do now is the majority of my information on this right now. Because even though this is it is kind of a big announcement, it's good to hear. It's not like such a huge announcement that I've been like, oh, I need to really learn a lot about this. But yeah, I think that's my biggest question of, once September 9th, 2024 rolls around, what happens to the trees that were already on there? Because, after... Okay, however, it will be saved in case you made a mistake during the integration process. If you made a mistake and need to change the tree, or you can do this. Okay. Huh. Okay, that didn't answer. Yeah. But it's interesting development. Okay. All right, we're coming up on 2 hours of streaming, so I think I'm only going to do maybe one or two more questions. That's it. Yeah, none of my aunts or uncles are really that great. I don't know. I like a lot of my aunts and uncles. I mean, feel like everyone, when you're dealing with close relationships for families, there's ups and downs with things. But it's actually funny, for the majority of my aunts and uncles, I was much more involved and communicative with them when I was younger than once I was older. Once I was older, it kind of all felt a bit more distant. But also, part of that was when I was growing up, I grew up near a lot of aunts and uncles, and now not so much. For a lot of you who don't know, I was actually born in Los Angeles, and a lot of my family lived in LA. So when I was growing up, I had two grandmothers near me. I had two aunts and a bunch of I had a few aunts and uncles and a bunch of cousins there. One of my great aunts lived there as well, and we would all do get-togethers all the time. There were a few, all sorts of cousins of mine that lived there too, and so it was like I saw a ton of them. And then when I was like 6, we moved to Chicago, right outside Chicago area called St. Charles, Illinois. And then that was when I went, a long time without much close family. And then we moved to North Carolina when I was about 10. And then we still didn't have a lot of close family, but one of my uncles lived in Virginia. My aunt and uncle, their kids lived in Virginia, just a 4 or 5 hour drive from us. So it was like, we'd see each other, 4 or 5 times out of the year, if not more. Always up there for July 4th, going up to a place in Locust Grove, Virginia, called Lake of the Woods. So anyone up in Virginia, Fredericksburg sort of area, you may be familiar with that. But yeah, so basically, for the majority of my life. It like went from like really being, around a lot of family to not so much. Yeah, all right. That was like a really random. I don't know why I started like, because Brian made a joke about his aunts and uncles not being that great. I guess. Oh, Alexandra, with the 2 euros. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You are one of the people that has been coming to my live streams for a long time. I feel like honestly, actually, I feel like these live streams I've gotten to know a lot of you so much better, and I definitely recognize so many of you. I think there was a stream I was trying to call you guys like genie heads or something. So I don't know if that's a good way to call my fans or something, but I feel like we need to come up with something like the Genie Squad, the GV Squad, or I don't know. I don't want to be the one to come up with it. I feel like you all need to, but yeah, you're definitely you're part of the squad. Part of the squad. A lot of you in here right now are probably part of the squad, to be honest. So, but yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you to everyone else who's done a super sticker or one of these for me today. I really do appreciate it. Help support the channel. I think a lot of I left my job of investigative genetic genealogy to try to pursue all of this stuff full time and be able to do more genealogy and stuff that I really love. And I love the IgG stuff, but I love a lot of this stuff even more. So having all the support from everybody and all of that, even just the eyeballs and supportive comments and things. It's great. Yeah, Genie Squad sounds cool. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, Weaving Scorpion Genie Squad sounds too much like Genie Squad. Yeah, that's a problem with all of my stuff. Is it all? Everyone always thinks I'm talking about genies, like out of a lamp. That's not too bad. Jarreteers. Jarreteers. Does that mean you're gonna come up with like a Mickey Mouse song for me? Give me a jet. Yeah. Thank you. We'll have to come up with a name for all of us. Yes, I think you got to. So yeah. Jarretas has interesting meaning in Portuguese. Oh, what does that mean? Yeah. The Pedigree posse. Yeah, that could be a good one. That could be a good one. So all right. Well, I think let's close that out. Yeah. Oh, we'll get one last question in. Re-asking about DNA painting for women. Does it show one strand from each parent still, or is it all mixed up? Well, for DNA painting, it'll give you both strands. So, let's see if I can pull something up in the last second. Yeah, it's going to be a little too much, but yeah, when you go to DNA Painter, it shows you both strands, so you can actually break it up to maternal or paternal. Or for people where you don't know which side it's from, you can just say both, and it will go onto both pairs at each spot. And then once you figure it out, you can reset it. So hopefully that helps. So yeah, lamp heads. I don't know, lamp heads. Very old people. I am surprised by how well I've cultivated a young audience of genealogists, because that's the number one thing that I hear from genealogists is, why aren't the young people into it? I think young people do like genealogy. It's just a lot of the content out there is really dry and really boring, and it feels like you're going to school half the time. And that's where I really have tried not to have my content. I want it to be much more interesting and appeal to a younger audience, and I guess I've been doing a decent job with it. So my Discord probably the number one place to show that, because that's a lot of young folks in there. Yeah, good night everyone. Good night, Julie. I know it's super late there in the UK. It's got to be, I guess it's probably about midnight there for you, isn't it? Telepathic Wanderer, thank you for joining. I like that. Genie Loggers. Genie lockers. Although with something like that, I feel like I'm going to need to put on a, you know, God, I can't even think of that shirt. The plaid shirts, the logging shirts. I can't. Why am I thinking tweed? Not tweed. Flannel. That's what I was thinking. Flannel. The match mob. Oh, hareta. Very old person in Portuguese. Interesting. Thank you. Another great stream. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And you made it this time. Early too. Sarah Eva, thank you. Thank you. Midnight. Yep. Yep. You are one of the youngins. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it is kind of funny being one of the younger genealogists in a my robot vacuum just started. That's a good time. Yeah. Thank you. Flannel. Good night. Hudanat. Merch. Yeah, check out my merch. Although, yeah, I should that'd be some funny merch. Thank you. Grave diggers? I don't know, maybe. None of us are really digging graves, though, are we? Or digging up graves? I don't know. But all right, well, with that and the vacuum in the background, hopefully not making too much noise. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and I am out of here.